Hey, welcome to Real Talk English. Today we're going to tackle a really big question, one that's pretty much changed everything for so many of us. Should we be in the office or should we be working from home?
At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, the working world went through a revolution. Hybrid working has remained incredibly popular years after the COVID lockdowns were lifted. But now, more and more companies are ordering employees back to work. And many employers have slammed working from home as inefficient and bad for the bottom line. So, is the work from home revolution over now?
We're going to dive right into the future of work. So, let me just ask you straight up. Are you working from home right now? It seems like such a simple question, right? But it's actually at the very heart of this huge global debate. And that's what we're going to explore today, the future of remote and hybrid work. So, the source for today's explainer? It's a podcast from the BBC called The Global Story. And we'll be digging into some key ideas from two real experts, an employment expert named Zoe Conway and a Stanford economist, Nick Bloom, who, get this, has spent years researching this exact topic. All right, let's get right into it. The whole story really kicks off with the pandemic, doesn't it? It just sparked this sudden massive revolution in how millions and millions of us do our jobs every single day. The podcast makes this one key point that really sets the stage for everything else. It says, years after the pandemic, this whole new way of working has stayed incredibly popular. Okay, so let's break down some of that language. First up, hybrid working. That's pretty simple. It's just that mix of working from home some days and being in the office on others. Then you've got lockdowns. We all remember those, right? The times when we were ordered to stay home. And when you hear that lockdowns were lifted, it just means they were ended or removed. And of course, this popularity has just kicked off a huge debate. I mean, on one side, you've got workers who absolutely love the flexibility, but on the other side, a lot of employers are getting worried. So what's the deal? Is this new model a win for workers but a loss for business? The podcast really captures this worry perfectly with a quote they feature from a business owner. He's talking about his concern about the financial hit, and he's really voicing a fear that, honestly, a lot of employers are feeling right now. Okay, let's look at these expressions. They're super useful. That nagging feeling he mentioned, it's that kind of worry that just sticks with you. You can't shake it. Continual just means something that's happening over and over without stopping. And the bottom line, that's the big one. For any company, that's their final profit. It's what it all comes down to. But, and this is where it gets really interesting, the podcast takes that nagging feeling and puts it right up against some cold, hard data. Because according to that economist Nick Bloom, his research actually shows that hybrid work can be, well, very profitable for companies. And this next quote just illustrates that perfectly. See, working from home isn't just a nice little perk anymore. No way. It's a core benefit that people now expect. Recruiters are saying it's become one of the big three, right up there with a pension and a healthcare plan. That's huge. And if you want proof, look at this number, 8%. That's right, 8%. The research shows that people value working from home so much that they're willing to take an 8% pay cut just to have that flexibility. Now think about that from a business perspective. That's a massive saving, and it's an incredibly powerful tool for attracting the best people. Okay, but this whole debate isn't just about the money, right? It goes deeper. It brings up these bigger social and even political questions, like, is it actually fair? Who really gets to benefit from this new way of working? And the podcast does a great job of showing two very different sides to this. So on one hand, you have someone like Lord Stuart Rose, and he's arguing that it's just not fair that service workers have to go to work while office workers get to stay home. But then, on the other hand, Nick Bloom points out that remote work actually opens up opportunities for people with disabilities or for parents who really need that extra flexibility. And this idea of a divide in society, it's echoed by some really big names like Elon Musk. The podcast mentions that he argues that remote work creates this clear separation, a sort of class division between different kinds of workers. So to really get what he's talking about, we need to know these terms. Class division, that's just a separation between different social groups. Then you have white-collar workers, who are usually the folks in offices. And blue-collar workers are the ones who typically do physical work or service jobs. And using these kinds of terms, it really shows you how personal and how political this whole debate has become. All right, so we've heard all these different arguments. The big question is, what happens next? Where is all this heading? Let's take a look at what the experts in the podcast are predicting for the future. To help predict the future, Nick Bloom uses this really simple but clever visual. He calls it the Nike swoosh theory, and it's a super easy way to picture the trend he's talking about. So here's how the swoosh works. It happens in 3 phases. Phase 1 was the drop. This was from 2021 to 2022, when the amount of remote work went down right after the pandemic. Phase 2 is where we are right now, the flat period. The numbers are pretty stable, not changing much. But the interesting part is what's next. Bloom predicts Phase 3, the slow rise. He thinks that with better technology and new leaders coming in, remote work is going to slowly start to increase again. Wow, okay, that was a ton of great information, right? So before we wrap things up, let's do a quick recap. We'll go over the main takeaways and all that valuable English we picked up today. First up, let's just quickly review those valuable words and expressions. We learned hybrid working, that mix of home and office. We talked about what it means for lockdowns to be lifted. We learned about that nagging feeling of worry and the super important business term, the bottom line. And finally, we covered the idea of a class division between white-collar and blue-collar workers. And what about the big ideas, the key takeaways from the podcast? Well, first, there's this real tension between what's good for workers and what employers are worried about. Second, the data seems to show that hybrid work can actually be profitable. Third, this whole thing has gone beyond business. It's become political, raising questions about fairness. And last but not least, the future probably looks like a slow, steady increase in working from home. So now you are totally ready. You've got the key vocabulary, you understand the main arguments. The original BBC podcast actually has a video version you can check out online. It's a fantastic way to go practice your new skills and really put your listening to the test. So, I'm going to leave you with one final question to think about. After hearing all of that, what do you think? What's the future of work going to look like?
I'd love to hear your thoughts, so let us know in the comments. And hey, if you found this explainer helpful, it would be awesome if you could give it a like and subscribe for more Real Talk English. Thanks so much for watching.